Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our latest installment of Coffee with the Playhouse. My name is Gabe Green. I am the Playhouse's Director of Artistic Development. And what a show we have for you today. We are joined by three amazing practitioners in the art of world building. First, we'll be joined by scenic designer extraordinaire Robert Brill and three-time Tony Award nominee. Later in the hour, we'll be heading to the San Diego studio of Animal Cracker Conspiracy, where Bridget, Rountree, and Iain Gunn will be giving us a tour of the spaces in which they're creating the new digital wow show, The Society of Wonder. As a reminder, pop any questions that come up during the presentation into the chat, where we'll be able to see them and ask them at the Q&A at the end of the hour. While we wait for the rest of the subscribers to leave the lobby and take their seats, we will, as is customary, do a little Playhouse trivia. This is to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win a Starbucks gift card. You're going to get three questions. Send the correct answers to subscriber@ljp.org and be entered to win. Here we go with the first question. What is the name of the 2015 WOW Festival production created by Animal Cracker Conspiracy? 2015. I remember it well. It was about 74 years ago. That was our second biennial WOW Festival on the campus of La Jolla Playhouse in UC San Diego. What was the name of Animal Cracker Conspiracy's show that year? Here's our second question. What was Robert Brill's most recent production at La Jolla Playhouse? Boy, you've got a lot to choose from. Robert Brill has designed approximately 20 shows at the Playhouse, stretching over nearly 30 years. But what was the most recent one? It was just a couple of years ago. All right, our final question. What Broadway theater is home to Diana, a new musical? Chris might be able to provide the answer to this one, as he just returned last week from filming it for its upcoming debut on Netflix, which we're all excited to see. What was the theater? Answer all three of those questions, email it to subscriber@ljp.org, and be entered to win. Without any further ado, I would love to throw it over to our managing director extraordinaire, Debbie Buchholz.
Thank you, Gabe. That was very kind of you. I'm still working on the trivia questions. They get harder and harder. So we do have your coffee mug this time. So I'm Debbie Buchholz. I'm the managing director of La Jolla Playhouse. It's a pleasure to welcome you every morning. This is our 5th coffee chat, and every single time there's Gabe with his gorgeous coffee mug for La Jolla Playhouse. I'm going to actually do a flashback Friday and tell you I'm using our sideshow. And next time, Gabe's going to have to include what your sideshow was done or something as part of the trivia. In any event, it's a pleasure to welcome you. Thank you for continuing to navigate Zoom with us. It's been actually a great way to connect with people we wouldn't otherwise have a chance to connect with. So thank you for working on Zoom and being with us. There's a lot going on. I'm going to give you a quick moment and tell you what we're doing, what Playhouse events are happening during this October and November, and then send you off for our amazing presentation today. So upcoming in about 2 weeks is Innovation Night on October 14th. It's going to be an incredible evening of networking and seeing the amazing technology and amazing innovation that's happening in San Diego right now around companies working in the COVID field. There's a panel conversation that evening led by and moderated by Chris Ashley, and includes Pradeep Khosla, the Chancellor of UCSD, Jeffrey Seller, the producer of Hamilton and Rent, Dr. Eric Topol from Scripps Medicine, and Dr. Cheryl Anderson, the Dean of the UCSD School of Public Health, all talking about making art in a time of COVID, which I think will be fascinating. So I encourage you to join us. That's on October 14th. That's Innovation Night. We're hoping that you're keeping up with our digital WOW work. Right now, you can experience Portalisa, David Reynoso's piece, and also the Society of Wonder. There are a lot of other digital WOW work as well that's available, all on our website. And we're about to start our Spotlight On classes, which are acting, playwriting, and puppet making classes for adults to participate in during this particular time. So in any event, a lot going on at the Playhouse. I hope you'll join us. You can find all of it at our website. And so now let's move into our morning conversation. So at this moment, it's a pleasure to welcome back to San Diego from his foray into New York and getting Diana up on stage and filmed the cast album made and filmed for Netflix, our partner in crime, our artistic director, Christopher Ashley.
Debbie, thank you very, very much. It is great to be back, and I had an incredible time both making the album, making the film, and also it was my first experience with a true COVID bubble with all of the testing and all of the medical personnel. So I had a full-on unique experience in my life where we also made a couple of things that I'm really proud of. So good to see you again, and good to see you all. We have amazing guests today. First up is Robert Brill, who, as Gabe mentioned, has designed over 20 Playhouse productions. Some of the hits include Summer, the Donna summer musical. I remember incredibly fondly and with like the impact on me of his production, his set design for Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. He designed The Wiz and Sideways, and with me as director, we worked together on, I think, 3 productions in the last couple of years, one of which was His Girl Friday, which was one of my favorite sets of any show I've ever done. He's been nominated for Tony Awards for Assassins and Guys and Dolls and Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. He was actually an undergrad at UCSD when he began his relationship with La Jolla Playhouse, and today he is the interim chair of the UC San Diego Department of Theater and Dance. So please welcome to the screen, Robert Brill.
Good morning, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Robert. I love that fixture in your background.
Yeah, you know, if I stand in the center of the screen, it sort of looks like they're shooting out of my head. So
it does. It's very
to one side or the other. Yeah.
It's sort of like biblical or something. I don't know. It's a beautiful design piece. So you have this incredibly long, deep history with the Playhouse. Can you talk about like what it was like to be an undergraduate and begin that relationship? How did it start?
You know, it really is being on the UCSD campus in those early days of my career was really a critical kind of benchmark. I think for me, a real foundation for me. You know, I started at UCSD when dinosaurs were still roaming the campus, and it was almost a few decades ago. Actually, it was a few decades ago. And I, at that time, Arthur Wagner was, of course, with the department. And it was really a time of like opportunity. I really remember the arriving on the campus for the first time, and I had done a couple years of work at a community college. I'd worked in the profession for a year, and then landed in San Diego and had never been here before, and was just struck by the beauty of the campus, and but the opportunity that existed in the department, and getting to know the Playhouse. Those were real critical moments for me when I was starting. The being on campus, meeting Arthur. In my first year as an undergrad, I had the pleasure of designing a project for Arthur. It was a production of A Lesson from Aloes, Fugard's play, and then I also met my future collaborators for a company that we would co-found and that would have a future life called Sledgehammer Theater. Scott Felcher and Ethan Fierst and a whole team of other undergrads that were in different majors spread out throughout campus. We all kind of joined together and created work. Our first production was actually in the canyon behind Central Library, now Geisel Library, but at the time it was called Central Library. And we sort of took over the space. And during finals week of my first year, we presented two Heiner Mueller works out in the Raw Canyon, and poured sand into the pit of it so that audience could sit on sand, and carved steps into the side of the hill so audience could get down into the canyon, and brought in generators and scaffolding. And so it was really the beginning of taking over space and creating immersive work. And that sort of spirit, then, I found in my family as well at La Jolla Playhouse. I got to know the Playhouse as an undergrad, and found it a really welcoming place to walk through those doors and immerse myself into that home as well. And then in '91, I was asked to design a production that inaugurated the Mandel-Weiss Forum, and that was Lee Blessing's play Fortinbras. And that was also my first collaboration with Des McAnuff. And that sort of began that kind of long collaborative relationship, and Des has continued to champion me, and the Playhouse has continued to champion me since then. And I have to say that photo that was just up was of Fortinbras, and that gentleman down in the lower left-hand corner holding his head in the kind of sand-colored costume actually is Jefferson Mays.
I love that.
Yeah, and he was a graduate in the program. He was doing his residency at the Playhouse at the time. So it was a really exciting time, and it's continued to be ever since then.
You mentioned so many people who kind of weave in and out of my life as well. Jefferson and I were undergrads together at Yale, and he played Hamlet for me in a production I did in the Yale library. So everything comes
how amazing.
Around.
Yes, because this is basically like Hamlet the next day, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I love that you mentioned Arthur Wagner. He was one of the great men I've ever known. He was sat on the search committee that picked me when I was coming to the Playhouse. He was on our board for the first 10 years of my time here, and he was both a full-throated cheerleader for the theater and dance department, and also for the Playhouse. And whenever we had a board meeting right after we had opened a new show, he would always kind of raise his hand and want to talk about why that play mattered in the world and why it mattered to him. He was such an incredible spokesperson and practitioner of theater, and made such a case for why it matters in people's lives.
Oh my goodness, and has championed so many of the artists that have emerged, during his tenure, and has inspired so many students. Both he and Molly, are big champions of the department, and Molly continues to be at our opening nights as well as at the Playhouse, and is a real kind of guiding spirit for us. Yeah.
She's extraordinary, and I love her taste in animal prints. You can always depend that there will be an animal print somewhere on her.
Without a doubt.
Ensemble. Absolutely. So you mentioned a long time collaboration with Des McAnuff, and some incredible work has come out of that collaboration. You seem to have a skill for building long-term relationships with directors and with institutions. Talk about what that collaboration with Des has been like for you.
We've worked. I think Des and I have worked on maybe 25. We're going on like 25 or more productions since our first production back in '91. It feels like it was just yesterday, and I think that is largely due to our industry and the energy that people bring to projects. And I consider myself very fortunate, and I am grateful every day for the experiences I've had. And one of the things that I talk to my students about, this is my fifth. I just started my 6th year teaching at UCSD, and one of the things that I think I just probably mention at least once or twice a day is that this industry is about certainly, it's about having talent and skills. It's about a lot of luck, right? Being in the right place at the right time. But it's largely about the relationships that we create, and the relationships that we have with institutions, and the relationships that we have with other artists and other makers. You and I have had, an ongoing relationship for many years now, and have created amazing work together. And and Des is somebody, like I mentioned, that you know, I worked with for the first time in '91, but it really started because I was around the Playhouse and I was eager and hungry and showed up. And then I was in the right place at the right time when there was an opening for a project and they asked. So, you know, working with Des he's an incredibly, first off, he has an incredible design eye, speaks about design well, is an incredible historian and dramaturg. So I feel like, you know, one of the things that I tell my students a lot is I always hope that I am not the smartest person in the room. And I have to say, without doubt, I am never the smartest person in the room. And I'm thankful for that. And whenever I'm working with Des and whenever I'm working with anyone, I always feel like this is a continuation of my education. And Des, sometimes we work on projects where there's not really a starting point. Like we're not really sure where to start. And I usually start by just asking questions. It's sort of like teaching, is like a lot of it is not having the answers, but really about posing the right questions and kind of trying to mine someone for all their thoughts. And a good example of that is that was interesting is the recent project that Des and I worked together, Ain't Too Proud, the Temptations musical. I remember Des coming to me and saying, you know, this is a lot about this story and a memory, but the only real hit I have on this is that it's about entrances and exits. You know, and I think when we're talking about practical space, we're thinking about, okay, right, it's about entering and exiting the stage. But what he really meant was that in this telling of the history of the Temptations by Otis, as the narrator, it's about all of the people that came in and out of the Temptations over the years. There have been 24 Temptations over the years. So it's not just that group of 5. And so it's about the story of entrances and exits. But in saying that, what he also meant was it was about the kinetic motion of how people might enter and exit the space. And that was really the one guiding sort of idea that inspired the design. So it became all about fluid space and how people move on space, even more so than really what was surrounding them. And then that evolved as well. But so it's great when you are working with colleagues that have that can speak about design, or at least speak about ideas. It may not necessarily be about something literal, but or something right out of the script. Yeah,
that's one of the things that every time you and I work together, I'm freshly reminded that like the first couple of meetings are always really about the show and the play and the story and the characters. The question of ground plan and you know, what's the couch going to look like are so pushed down the road. And I love that you're both a designer and a dramaturg, you know, really interested in storytelling and probing what that script is about. And sometimes it takes you in really unexpected directions. We worked together on a production called Chasing the Song, and it was a page to stage, so it really was very exploratory. But early on, we talked about how the making of the music was so crucial in terms of expression of self and culture and personality, and what that led us to through about 5 or 6 conversations was these 4 pianos on stage, as all these young people are writing this music in the Brill building. And then like through the next 5 or 6 conversations, these pianos started to morph, and then they would turn into recording studios and sound stages and back alleys and fire escapes. I mean, these pianos, these 4 simple pianos had this incredible transformative ability that I never would have guessed going into that process.
No, but I mean, so speaking of, you know, people that are smarter in the room, you know, and that was due to, you know, your thoughts and your ideas, you know, about staging, you know, because you said, well, what if these pianos transform into other objects? You know, and that's where I think, you know, when the collaboration starts to get messy is when it's the most exciting, you know, when we stop thinking about whose idea was whose. But I do remember, Chris, that was your brilliance that came in there. I can think about so many projects that I've done, you know, as I look at production photos of things that that idea was like, that's a fantastic idea. And that actually was a seed that was planted by the lighting designer, or the costume designer, and so it's how we kind of take those and then, turn them into other things, into other expression. I mean, the work we did on His Girl Friday, was like, that was a great exercise for me I don't get to do a lot of this kind of like high realism, and your excitement about creating a space where, that we could really marinate over all those details, really spoke to me, and your interest in the architecture of the space, and finding really kind of sound, inspiration for entrances and exits in this space. That's actually one of my favorite photos, because you can kind of see the depth of field there. But I remember our first conversation about it was talking about, one of the first was actually because we were talking about like the criminal courts building, in Chicago, and doing that kind of deep dig into the research. And then we landed on this photo that was actually from an office space, I think in Quebec. And it was just about the quality of light in the room and the position of people to windows and an architectural column in the midst of the space. And those things started to anchor the design, and we just kind of kept building from there. And it's like a great journey, and to see it unfold like that. So, when you have people that are into design, it's as well, and ideas, it's as you start to add more to that puzzle, it's a great process. It's fun.
You also mentioned the idea that so much of what theater people do is collaboration, and you mentioned institutions and the relationship between artists and institutions, artists with each other. I might add to that, one of the realizations I came to before I was ever at the Playhouse, when I was a freelance director, was that I needed a longer term relationship with an audience. That the kind of just meeting an audience for the 2 hours of them watching the play didn't have enough longevity to it and enough nuance to it. And I do have to say that one of the really satisfying things about being an artistic director is being able to be in conversation with an audience across a season and a decade, and all the different ways that those plays, the many plays you do in a decade, can kind of interrelate and paint a really detailed, broad canvas of the world we live in.
Yeah.
So that with those audience members who are out there, our collaboration together is incredibly exciting, and a lot of why I love this job.
No, and it's for me, the Playhouse, now is over, more than a couple decades, has been this fantastic artistic home, which is why I think also being on campus and now teaching, and, helping to guide the Department of Theater and Dance, the relationship between those two institutions. I mean, I can't think of a better place to be where, I have a relationship with both of these institutions, and so being a part of Playhouse productions now with it's kind of like it's a second home, and I've been through a number of generations at the Playhouse, and and being an artist in residence there and getting to spend time and being part of the artistic life of the Playhouse was such a great opportunity, and came at such a really important, I think, time and place for me, that I think these are great ways to kind of broaden the ability for an institution like the Playhouse to be a home for artists. Yeah,
I love that. You were actually our first artist in residence. You inspired the idea, and I think we've had 6 since you. But you started the program.
Well, it was a great opportunity, and it's great to also, for me, to be a part of season planning, and in ways it was a great primer for the work that I'm doing in the department now. So it's great being the life of an institution rather than just being transient, because normally as a designer you might be there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but to be there as an ongoing part of it really allows you also a greater I mean, I already have such a fond appreciation and respect and admiration for the staff, but to see them on a daily basis just really kind of deepens that relationship. So I thank the Playhouse for that. Yeah.
Well, that means a lot to us too, because I do think that a theater is really defined by the artists who make a long-term home there, right? If you think about August Wilson and his making a home at Yale Rep, the great theaters of history are great because a couple of great artists, said, this is where I want to make my work. And I would certainly count you among those.
Well, and I also, one of the things that I remember is that as an undergrad, showing up on campus and being in the realizing what the Playhouse was, is that there was always this sense of energy and excitement happening there, and that is like one of the first memories, and something I always think about the Playhouse is there's an opportunity happening there, and I think that's why subscribers and audiences come back.
I love that. Well, speaking of coming back, I'm hoping that we're gonna, after we lose you for a moment, that you will come back at the end of the session and invite some questions and audience from the audience. But thank you, Robert, for your talent and your words. And we'll see you in just a moment.
All right.
Thank you. And as we move into our second segment, which is with two extraordinary artists, Bridget Rountree and Iain Gunn, and we're actually going to be visiting them in their studio. They are the driving forces behind Animal Cracker Conspiracy, the award-winning San Diego-based puppet company. And they work in different forms, puppetry performances that incorporate elements of street theater and spectacle, video projection, circus arts. We were fortunate to be their home for the San Diego Foundation Creative Catalyst Fellowship, where they developed a show called Paper Cities at the Playhouse. They were part of the WOW Festival. I think the question that Gabe posed at the beginning was about the 2015 festival, and that I'm going to spoil that for you by telling you that was Gnome Sense, a really delightful piece that wove through the grounds of La Jolla Playhouse. And their newest creation, which was commissioned by the Playhouse as part of our digital WOW series, is called the Society of Wonder. We have a little sneak peek of that. So roll video. Welcome to Bridget and Iain. I love your performers parking only sign in the background. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration for creating the Society of Wonder?
Sure, Chris, and it's great to see you. Thank you for having us. We're called Animal Cracker Conspiracy, so that leads to thinking about alternative forms of gathering and sharing ideas. So we've been thinking about secret societies for a long time. And through research and some collaboration with dear friends of ours, we looked at the history of secret societies that were formed to do good in communities. And we were also looking at a story called The Black Hen or the Underground Inhabitants by Anthony Pogorelsky, a Russian writer who was the uncle of the first Alexei Tolstoy. And this story is a morality tale, but it also has magic chickens in it. So if anyone wants to look that up. So that was kind of a leaping off point for the Society of Wonder. And I'm sure there's a lot of other stories and works that are going to come out of this research. But we wanted to look at, the world today needs some opportunities for people to get together and do good unto others. And of course, typically our tale took some absurd twists and turns. And, we've been, of course, doing a lot of live work over the last 10, 15 years. But we've been really interested in making films And we had an opportunity at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center a couple years ago to take a class called Video Anarchy with Tim Lagash and Martin P. Robinson. And that inspired us to start working with puppets and film. And so this seemed like a great opportunity to create a world and figure out how the puppets would live in that world.
I love that. There's also a kind of focus in your piece about the natural world, how things are used and then recycled. Can you talk a little bit about how those ecological ideas work their way into the piece?
Oh, well, we've been a pretty scrappy puppet company right from the beginning. I had a undergrad job as a summer janitor, and so I've been looking at trash for a long time, and I just sort of can't resist picking up a choice tidbit here and there and figuring out a way to bring it to life. And one of our favorite things is object puppetry. So when we see something that's been discarded and it has a bit of personality, we can see it coming to life. And so a lot of the elements in the show are really, found, but have almost a significant life or history that we've sort of tried to weave into the world of the Society of Wonder.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And how is the kind of COVID shutdown been treating you? Is it how has it affected your work?
Well, we wouldn't have made this piece without COVID or the pandemic, because this piece originally was meant to be performed live. That's usually our main way of performing and making work. And so when everything shut down and then just all our contracts, like many artists and creative, obviously in theater and performances and live events, periodly just one by one shut down, canceled. So we were kind of in shock and just went, as artists, what do? Well, you get in your studio and you make work and you respond, right? That's our job, is to respond to current times. And so it was a great opportunity for us, thanks to the Playhouse asking us if we had any ideas of work that we would like to submit or pitch for Digital Wow. We thought, well, we've been working on the Society of Wonder already for 4 years. We thought, well, let's take these puppets and create an alternate reality that comments on the absurdity of times that we're living through right now. So in that sense, it was a great opportunity. And we've been really, really busy right now, as I think possibly many artists are, in making work in response to what's happening right now.
Reinventing yourself.
Well, your studio was kind of amazing even before this whole last period started, and now you've both got a puppetry studio and a movie studio, kind of all in one. Do you mind? Could you give us a little tour of your space and how it works?
Absolutely, we'd love to.
Okay. I'm just gonna switch our camera and mic really quick so we can walk around with you all.
Fantastic.
Okay, so welcome.
Ooh, that was crazy.
Okay, so these are the cast and characters, the players right here. We have the judge, who is made primarily out of cardboard, recycled toilet paper rolls for his head, bottle caps for his little earphone, an old binder clip that connects that. Let's see. Their central rod puppets are held there, so we can actually hold 2 at a time, which was great during the pandemic because we can't have a lot of people in the space. And then the arms are also jointed with a twisted wire technique. And he also has, most of them have triggers inside here. So on the central rod, Iain always builds the mechs. And so that triggers his mouth right there. So they all have a trigger that does something different in that way. And the triggers are all designed differently. Also, we have our DA, who's the double agent. She's very mysterious. I'm not going to spoil alert any of that because you'll have to wait as the episodes come out. We have miniatures that we have done also to change perspective in shots. We have the Commodore, who has a little mushroom scrub brush for a head. He's a toilet paper roll head, also cardboard, some paper mache, and he's got a really fun mouth mechanism too that he grumbles around all the time. Do you want to show him the legs?
For the close-ups, we had to do things like separate their legs because these are rod puppets. So for anything that involved feet, we had to create legs that would do those close-up shots, like skateboarding or digging with a shovel. This piece was largely inspired by getting some free AstroTurf scraps that were left over from somebody's waterless landscaping job.
Here we have, that was the punk. This is the cyborg, who is part human, part chicken, and part machine. He is the one who connects all the dots and brings the characters together. Here we go. Let's go to some sets.
So in our studio is a converted RV cover, 18 by 40 feet. And
we built it from the ground up, laid floors, put the walls up, and called it home.
So this is one of the sets that also has some of the great objects we were talking about before. We've got some rusty old bike pumps that are the pillars, and a really choice piece of ducting that came out of a 100-year-old print shop in San Francisco.
So we use two styles for the shooting of these, and we use tabletop puppetry, which is literally on the table here in these small sets, and they move in here. And sometimes I'm on a rolling stool so I can move around because sometimes shots take a really long time, or I'm on the ground to be out of the shot and we're working this way. So that's how we pretty much shot the first 4 episodes, was in this style of tabletops. And there's multiple little sets now that were in that vein. This is the Commodore's house. And the Commodore's house, which is all recycled cardboard. The gifted AstroTurf Iain was talking about. And that's the Zebos. We won't talk about that because that's later on.
And then another way that we had to figure out how to shoot was when we needed multiple puppeteers
who were masked, of course.
And as distant as possible, we had to create a much bigger set that we could hang from our studio ceiling.
So, and this is overhead. So if you see, the Muppets, this is a really traditional way to puppeteer, is overhead, because you can move around, and being able to be on your feet has a different sense of movement than if you're just on the tabletop. So you can have a lot of players up here and they can run around, and the drone comes down, and this is basically how we moved into larger shots with many puppets.
And we also have our fish tank, which is how we're operating some of the puppets.
This is an overhead rod control. So the other puppets were underneath them. And this style of puppet, actually, all the controls are from the top.
So that's a little bit about the studio.
I'm going to switch cameras so we can see you all.
This is so fantastic. If I took a leave of absence for a year, could I be your apprentice?
We'd love to have you.
Anytime, Chris.
It looks like the most fun ever. So thank you for showing us that. You're also about to teach a class at the Playhouse through our Spotlight On series. Can you tell anybody who's interested as a potential students what they could expect from your class, which I think is called Puppet Mind?
Yes, we're really excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
We had a chance to develop this material also as a kind of pivot during COVID, and we sort of developed the material through a free class that we were offering to friends and families. And so we're going to take it to the next level, but it's basically a survey of all the different types of puppetry with, instructions on how to build just about anything. So we're going to work small, we're going to work easy to hard, and we're going to cover everything from kinetic, like rod controlled puppets, to shadow puppets, to hand puppets, finger puppets, marionettes, and even the sort of tabletop style that we've used in our other productions like Paper Cities.
Fantastic. Do you go into the sort of bunraku world at all?
Yeah, that we're going to make a jointed puppet that people can operate on a table with friends or by themselves.
Which is really great. We're excited to weave that into how the class can utilize these puppets to for storytelling and to share their own stories. And I think right now, so many of us are working digitally, that puppetry and having another element within that storytelling could be really exciting for students and educators alike. So we're excited to roll that out.
Yeah, and we'll give you a lot of the tips and tricks of our favorite tools and things that are our go-tos for putting something together quickly to get an idea down. And so, hopefully this is going to inspire other people to create suitcase shows for their neighborhood driveway tour, or even their own films if they're inspired by the Society of Wonder.
And the material list looks a little daunting. There are a lot of things, but I assure you, you can find most of them in your trash. So we have used that same ethos that we love, which is, making something out of nothing and using what you have right now. How do you just take your resources that you have right now and create a puppet and a show?
I love that. I think between the work you're doing in your studio and the classes, I think we can make San Diego the center of the puppet universe.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Build a whole community of puppet makers. I love that.
Yeah.
So maybe we could bring Robert back to the screen and turn over to any questions that the audience has. Welcome back, Robert. I think backstage, Robert, you met Bridget and Iain and vice versa.
Yes, and in fact, I was around the Playhouse when the first WOW Festival happened, and I remember sitting in on their work, and it's been great to follow their work since then. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be in that studio.
You and I together will be the two apprentices. It'll be good. Gabe, welcome back.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back. We've got a number of questions already in the chat, so we're just going to jump right in. From Danny, we have a question for Bridget and Iain. How long does it take you to create a newly imagined puppet?
Oh, wow. It can really vary. We do large puppets as well. So, I had set myself a goal to build puppets as quickly as I could for this series, because we didn't have a lot of time to get up to production. And these puppets are all inspired by this Hans-Jürgen Fettig style, that this legendary book that's been around in the puppetry universe for many years. And so he mostly deals with hand and rod puppets, but with like tricky mechanisms and stuff like that. And I wanted to figure out how I could do them as fast as possible. So literally the basic version of all these puppets was done in 2 weeks. And there could have been a couple of like thumbnail sketches, but I studied visual arts for many years and still consider myself a visual artist. But I think the thing that I love about puppetry was it allowed me to be more of a sculptor and just hands-on making something and allowing it to sort of tell you what it wants to be and come to life has been really fun. So, I'm also carving some wooden heads, and those puppets are going to take like a year to create,
Really depends on the style of puppet that you're making.
Yeah. The giants can take like a month to 6 weeks to create.
That's great. And Nancy asked, just as a follow-up question, you mentioned not having done drawings, the visual arts background. So it was really sort of developing them in process, the final image.
Yeah, for the little ones, these puppets are about 2 feet tall, and so a lot of them just we just sort of made them. But if we're doing something larger, like a stilt puppet costume, there's tons of drawings.
Same with the giants, and I mean, these
patterning
puppets,
and all of that kind of
the
stuff.
joints get sketched out to, what they need to do, what kind of, what are we wanting them physically. It's about manipulation, and puppetry at the heart of it is movement. If it doesn't live, then it's not a puppet. So a lot of it is figuring out the jointing and what we would like it to do, and then of course it tells us what it can do, and you work with that. So it's that relationship.
Yeah, we actually spent about an additional week just redesigning the arms and hands for these puppets, because we had a design that wasn't going to look. It was fine for a live performance, but it wasn't going to look good on film, and we wanted, the hands are really important because these puppets all handle things, and we do close-ups. So we redesigned all the hands and rebuilt all their arms and shoulders, and that took a week unto itself.
That's amazing. Robert, we've got a question here for you. Aside from research, what are your other favorite sources of design inspiration?
Wow, there's so much. I watch a lot of content, and there's so much out there now. So I am constantly inspired by things happening in whether it's video production design, film design, television, any kind of content. I think is it's like how so many people started in the theater world and then moved into other industries. So I love watching. It's a blessing and a curse, because you can't help but watch something and then be completely trapped in how did they do that, and you try and sort of separate yourself. So I watch a lot of content. I've always been a huge fan of graphic design ever since I was a kid, and actually started off in puppetry. In fact, I started off in puppetry and doing magic as well, and so it's now I actually feel like I get to do magic, but it's in a whole different form, right? Yeah, I mean, and I'm an architect and interior design kind of nut. So I enjoy all those things, and, aside from specific research for projects.
When I first got out of college and started directing plays, the New York Public Library had this amazing thing called the Picture Collection, where you could go in and take out, I want to know about Renaissance headboards. Right. There would be a set of 50 pictures of Renaissance headboards, and penguins. What are pictures? What are all the kinds of guys? Now that that research is in the search engines, you get this incredible volume of imagery coming at you by just typing in words that relate to your play. It's really transformed the way I do a design meeting.
Right. No, and I've spent time in the picture collection in New York, and in fact, the San Diego Public Library in its old location used to have the picture collection as well. And I remember being in that room, and it was always a certain period in time. There was that about a 20-year span that all of those images were collected from.
Yes.
But there's nothing that beats actually, opening up a book and seeing an image and searching for it, because there's a lot of sort of happy accidents that happen because you stumble on something that you had no intention of researching, and then that becomes inspiration, right?
Absolutely.
Robert, I just wanted to follow up. I was struck by you talking about, of course, theater, a highly collaborative art form, and you talking about so much of what your discoveries are aided by the collaboration with the other designers on a show. And I was wondering if there were any particular designers over the length of your career that particularly their relationship and their insight and their collaboration are particularly meaningful for you.
Well, it's interesting. There's so many amazing designers out there, and in so many different areas. There's one designer in particular that is known throughout the industry, and that most of us have all worked with before. Like Jim Ingalls, who's a lighting designer, and is just beloved in our community. One of the many things that I really adore about him is that he not only is an incredible dramaturg, but he has an ability to remember every person that he meets. He does not walk into a theater without knowing the name of, the usher, the production staff, everybody on the crew, and he will introduce himself in the beginning, like casually, throughout the process. But he also remembers, the concierge at a hotel, and the hotel room, his favorite hotel room at a small hotel in Chicago, and which room is the room that, that he loves staying in because of the light or because of where it was located. So he just is somebody that's kind of in the moment, and I really love the fact that he has that connection with the people and the places that he travels to, because we spend so much of our time in normal circumstances traveling, and so he's got this great kind of rich extended family and history, and I adore that about him. So he's somebody that really comes to mind when you think about colleague. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite images from a show I did is actually attributed to an idea that Jim came up with. So it was not my idea. So he's a terrific colleague.
I'd love to know the same from Bridget and Iain. Is there somebody who really influenced you?
Oh, quite a few people. Lynn Jennings from the San Diego Guild of Puppetry has been such a huge inspiration and influence on us. She really connected us to the greater world of puppetry. But at the same time, when I met Bridget, she had just been in South Africa doing an artist workshop and had met and explored the studio of Handspring Puppet Company. And we all know Handspring from The War Horse.
Yeah.
That was really the first time that I really considered puppetry. I think I was in the camp with a lot of people that puppets were for kids. I mean, I grew up watching the Muppets, but in my mind, they weren't fine art. And so, I wanted to be a visual fine artist. And that had, in my mind at the time, that was puppetry wouldn't have compared to that. And then I had the good fortune to, go into the studio and spend a couple days with Adrian and Basil from Handspring, and it changed my opinion completely. What they were doing was amazing. And it was, you get to draw, paint, sculpt, consider story, have this huge collaborative relationship with the lighting designer and musicians. And yet it had this really, their scale of working was way beyond what we do. They're, amazing. And so it was the first time that I thought, oh, I want to do that, because you can utilize so many different skills within, this one medium. And it also had the immediacy of the medium too, where you don't have to have a lot of money. You can use recycled and found objects to tell the story and bring it alive in that way. And you get to perform live too. And then I don't have to act because I'm not an actress. And so you have a little puppet who's now the player, and you can, and a lot of it, I'm not seen, which was great because I get stage fright and I'm talking about memory. I can't memorize lines to save my life. So it was it was perfect way to get to bring together all these different forms. And there's been so many.
Well, and we particularly love the collaboration between William Kentridge and Handspring Puppet Company, which is sort of most exemplified by Ubu Roy and the Truth Commission, a piece that they did in South Africa after the fall of apartheid. And it involves like hand-torn paper shadows, hand-drawn animations that Kentridge did, as well as these carved jelutong dogs' heads that are attached to a suitcase that are the way that Ubu hides all the information and money. He just puts it through the dog's mouths and it ends up in this alligator skin bag. And just they were mixing all the things that we're really inspired by: objects, beautiful sculpture, and fine art.
Love that.
Yeah. Last quick question, because I see we're running short on time, but episode 3 of Society of Wonder drops today. So if you haven't enjoyed episodes 1 and 2 yet, you can binge all 3 of them, and then you'll be hungry for the final 3 episodes. As you've been filming it, I know from working with you on the project that you had a very tight idea of what the story is. Have there been any discoveries you've made along the way that sort of pulled you away from your original idea and you decided to follow it, or has it really been just kind of sticking with the original story?
Oh no.
Oh, we never stick with the original story.
Yeah. We're way too easily influenced and malleable, so it's completely transformed into something different. I mean, we've held on to our final scene desperately, like shipwrecked mariners clinging to like a raft of wood. But other than that, the puppets have really sort of told us where they want to go and who they are and what they want to do in this world.
Yeah, and the current times changed the story too. It was going to be live, and then these characters kind of stole the show. And so, and as we always work, collaboratively with the puppets and with each other and other folks like Margaret Noble, who's doing the sound design for the piece. And so we are always in relationship that way and following. And I think Robert said, things arise and other people have little nuggets and ideas. And Gabe, you've been working with us, and your ideas and way of arranging it has changed the trajectory. So everybody's involved in that, and in that way, it's always going to morph into what it wants to be. I guess we follow along.
I mean, we're both have strong associations and ideas about what we want to do, but we're extremely permeable to outside influence and ideas. And some of the things that you'll see in episodes 3, 4, and 5 were things that just came from the outside world, from the environment, from the studio, from working in here, from the heat wave.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much. We can't wait to see the remaining episodes.
Yay.
And Robert, Iain, Bridget, and Chris, thank you all so much for sharing your Friday. Everybody at home, we're going to throw it back to Debbie Buchholz for a final word.
Hi again, everybody. I was just fascinated by all the puppets. In any event, just a huge thank you to all of you for joining us, hoping that you're all staying safe and well, and that you have a lovely weekend in beautiful, beautiful San Diego or wherever you are. And thanking again to Robert and to Bridget and Iain for joining us. You guys are incredible, and this morning's conversation was so amazing. And Chris, you're an incredible moderator too.
Thank you.
But in any event, and I do want Robert to move over one more time so we see the beams of light emanating from him as a final shot. And Bridget, scoot a little bit so it's performers parking only to the left. There we go. And beams of life emanating from Robert. And that seems a perfect way to end. Well, and thank you to everybody so much for being here. Thank you for joining us, and have a lovely weekend. We will see you at our next coffee chat.